This old guy DIY video has to do with the financial independence retire early movement and a friend of mine who actually applied it. He quit working at the age of 45 for other people. He's almost 60 now. So we were talking about some of the things that he did and how people who are working today could apply his processes and get the same outcome. So one of the keys is the future value calculator. And when he's shown it to different people, everybody says, "Why didn't I learn about that in high school?" I don't know, but that's what we're going to talk about here. Your financial future is within your control. The goal of this collection of slides is to introduce people to the concept and application of the future value calculator and help them see that financial independence and the opportunity to retire before 62 is probably attainable and within their control. The information and opinions shared here come from a friend who retired at the age of 45, was initially unsure if he had enough money to stay retired, and 13 years later is enjoying financial freedom more than he could have imagined. This information is based upon one man's experience. He's not a financial planner, just a guy who likes to learn, fix things, solve problems, and help others. In 13 years of retirement, he's averaged a 13% annual return. 59 years later, after being married to a hot chick for 32 years, raising 2 kids he's proud of, working until 45, and surviving a nearly fatal heart attack at 54, he shared this information with me in hopes that it would help others see that financial freedom is within reach if they make a few changes and work to a plan. The process of budgeting and forecasting investment value. So many people tell themselves, when I have X dollars, I'm going to retire. There are 2 ways to determine how long it will take to accumulate X dollars. The first is to create a budget, determine how much will be invested each year, and then forecast the rate of return. Enter those inputs into a future value calculator, determine the number of years, and go to work. The second technique is to enter the desired number of years until retirement, the value of the current investments, expected rate of return, and then let the calculator tell you how much must be invested each year. Then you determine how much money you need each month to live the life that you want. Then you adjust the inputs, and that'll help you decide if it's worth reducing spending in other areas to make investing for retirement a higher priority. You may ask, what is the future value calculator? If you just go to Google and type in FV calculator, a bunch of them will pop up, and the one that I used for this demonstration was calculator.net. But a future value calculator allows you to input 4 values: the number of periods, that's N, starting amount, which is the present value, PV, the interest rate, and the periodic deposit or payment, which is PMT. Then the computer or calculator determines the future value, and that's FV, based upon the information you input. When using the FV calculator, be sure to keep the periods consistent. He found it easier to express things in years rather than months. So as we go forward, N represents the number of years the investment will be in place. PV is the amount of money that you have today, present value. I is the annual interest rate you expect to earn. PMT stands for payment, and that's the annual amount of money that you will invest. And if you will be withdrawing money each year, PMT will be negative. The future value calculator allows you to change inputs to see how changing the number of years, the amount invested, and interest rate will affect the value of the pile in the future. For example, if you have $15,000 today, you plan to invest $3,000 per year, you expect to earn 13% per year in interest, and want to know how many years for it to grow to $1 million, your inputs would be N, which is the number of years, is 27, PV is 15,000, I is 13% interest, and PMT is $3,000. And in this case, when I was trying to find it, I just went to N and I put in 50 first, and I saw 50 was too much. Then I put in 25 and I saw that was too little. So I went 25, 26, 27, and it came out to about $1 million at 27 in the N column. So that's how you use this thing as a tool, just changing the inputs, whether it's the interest rate or the number of years, and also the payment. You can figure out what type of equation works best for you. This slide shows the actual FV calculator from calculator.net. You can see for the number of periods I put in 27. The starting amount, PV, is 15,000. The interest rate per year is 13, and the periodic deposit is 3,000. So then you click on calculate, and if you look at the future value, it's $1,009,000 27 years later. So that's how you use this tool. After using the FV calculator to see the potential outcomes, create a plan to invest the amount you determined will get you to the goal in the time allowed. So many people spend money all month, look at what's left and say, I'll invest that. Other people's budget, they see that they're spending $15 per day on lunch, for example. They think, if I pack my lunch, I can save $12 a day. That's 20 working days a month. That's 240 per month that I can invest. And it's your life and your plan, so whatever you decide is fine. And when it comes to this particular tool, my buddy's point was, at least if you understand the options, you can pick any option you want, but it's just a matter of understanding the potential outcomes depending on the action you take. So almost 60 years later, my friend has concluded that having a plan is half of the battle. He suggests reviewing the plan and progress towards that plan at least every December. And as he was young and going through his life, he created 1, 5, and 10-year financial plans, and he encourages everybody else to do the same thing. In his experience, you need to understand the balance of risk and reward and accept some risk if you're driving towards financial freedom. The question of where to invest. He has invested with Fidelity for over 30 years. He's never had a problem and suggests them to others. He believes if you'll need the funds in less than 5 years, you are saving, not investing. And if you're willing to accept the ups and downs of the stock market and commit to yourself to leave the money invested for at least 5 years, you are an investor. His preferred investments today are FXAIX, that's a Fidelity mutual fund that mirrors the S&P 500, and FSELX, the Fidelity Select Electronics mutual fund that has the drivers of the artificial intelligence industry as the largest holdings. FXAIX has averaged 13% annual return for the last 10 years, and FSELX has averaged 26% annual return for the past 10 years. If someone says, I have money to invest today, I really don't care about all this other stuff, if it were yours, where would you put it? I'd like that money to double every 5 years. His answer is FSELX. When it comes to selecting advisors and investments, he shared these points. Hire a fee-based investment professional for investors who want professional guidance. Ask how much you will pay her each year. Ask what the expected returns of the investment are. If she suggests bonds, run away. She's trying to preserve value, not increase value. And ask how she expects your returns to compare to the S&P 500. When personally selecting investments, stick to mutual funds and ETFs. Individual stocks are too risky. Use the fund screener tools available on Morningstar, Fidelity, and others, and highlight funds that were in the top performers over 1, 5, and 10 years, and then look into those further. He encourages others to learn from his mistakes. Over 35 years of investing, he has owned individual stocks, mutual funds, and ETFs. In his 20s, after selecting a stock and having it nearly double in less than a year, he concluded he was smarter than the average bear. If he had more money to invest, he could effectively print money. So he took a second mortgage on his house and invested those funds. That year, his investment lost 30%. He didn't tell his wife about that one, and he went back to mutual funds. And remember, time is your friend. Envision your investment pile like a snowball at the top of a hill. You get a little nudge now, and over the next 20 years, it'll grow and keep getting larger while rolling down the hill with only an occasional nudge from you. Once that snowball gets rolling, 3% up or down days that cause CNBC and the Wall Street Journal to declare the sky is falling will be of no consequence. Now we're going to get into some examples. Now in this case, we're looking at a person who might be 33 years old. They have $100,000 sitting in the bank, and their goal is to have $1 million. So in determining the inputs, as I said earlier, he prefers to use things in terms of years rather than months. So for this example, we're going to say the person is looking at 3 different investment options. SPAXX, and that's currently paying about 4.04%. That's a money market fund where you leave your money sit with Fidelity, and it's just like being in a checkbook. There's no risk. It's based on the T-bill market, and you'll get 4%. Inflation runs about 2.5%, so you'll come out a little bit ahead. FXAIX, that's averaged 13% over the last 10 years. That's at S&P 500 mutual fund, and FSELX at 26%. So if we assume you're $100,000, you're going to leave it sit there for 10 years with no additional investment. So after 10 years, if you put it into SPACs, it's worth $116,000. If you put it into FXAIX, it'll be worth $339,000. And if you left that $100,000 sit there with FSELX and it returned 26% a year, as it has for the last 10 years, it would be worth $1,008,000. Calculation with investing $7,000 annually into your Roth IRA. So after 10 years, your $100,000 plus $7,000 put in annually would be worth $191,000 in SPACs, $468,000 in FXAIX, and $1.253 million if you put it into FSELX. And all these numbers assume they perform over the next 10 years as they have over the last. So if a person is married and they can put $14,000 per year in, SPACs increases to $266,000, FXAIX is 597,000, and FSELX is 1.5 million. So the point of this exercise is to illustrate that most people are not in a position to save for retirement. We must invest for retirement. Annual inflation has averaged 2.5% over the last 20 years, so we need to earn at least 2.5% on our money just to break even. Here we have the page from calculator.net with the inputs I just discussed. So we have 10 years, present value of 100,000, 26% interest, 0 additional dollars, and it shows $1,008,000 10 years from now. This slide shows the impact of that interest rate. So we have the same $100,000. It sat there for 10 years, no additional investment, and in this case it was in FXAIX, so it got 13% instead of 26%, and you see that it's worth $339,000 after 10 years rather than the $1 million. So that demonstrates the cost and consequence that goes with chasing a higher interest rate. We see the impact of investing that money, the $100,000, at 1.5% interest in a CD or a bond or a bank, and after 10 years you end up with $116,000 rather than that $339,000 had it been at 13%, or $1 million if it had been there at 26%. This slide demonstrates what $100,000 could grow into over 10 years with 26% interest if you put in $7,000 a year. For example, that's the current limit on the Roth for people that are under 50. But after those 10 years, it would be worth $1.253 million. In this slide, we take our little buddy, that $100,000, 10 years, 26% with FSELX. We're saying it's a married couple, for example. $14,000 a year are put in there for the Roth IRA investment. And in those 10 years, it's now worth $1.498 million. This slide shows the other end of the spectrum. The person that had $100,000, they thought the stock market is too risky. They left it in CDs or bonds, got 1.5% interest, and they put in $14,000 a year for their Roth. And they finally hit $1 million 43 years later. So in this case, they didn't keep up with inflation. It was a struggle, but they hit the million. Well, if you stayed with me this far, we've made it to the summary. So hopefully this short collection of PowerPoint slides leaves you feeling like your financial future is in your control. As a kid, my buddy thought his future consisted of getting married, having a few kids, working until he couldn't work anymore, retiring, having less disposable income in retirement than he had while working, living a few more years, and then dying. And the older people he knew didn't appear to have much money, and they seemed to be limited by funds rather than time. And in 1987, while in engineering economics class in college, he was introduced to the future value calculator. And those were the days before widespread computer adoption, and calculations were done on Texas Instruments calculators. When running the calculations, he was skeptical that those resulting numbers could be real. And he thought, hey, if this is real, why don't they teach this to everybody? Why don't more people apply this? And then once he understood the rule of 72, that 72 divided by your annual return results in the number of years it takes for money to double, he began to look at things completely differently. We've made it to the last page. Once he started investing using a 15% annual return rate, he looked at purchases differently. Based on the rule of 72, he knew his investment would double every 5 years. So he'd look at a car and say, would I rather have that $30,000 car today or have 60 grand in my investment account in 5 years? So planning for retirement became more of an exercise in listing people and places he wanted to see and things he wanted to do rather than limiting activities based upon an expected monthly payment of X dollars, which would almost certainly be less than he had earned while working. Since retiring in 2012, he's earned and spent more money each year than he did while working, and his net worth is about 3 times what it was the day he retired. He'd never had a pension or monthly payments of any kind. It was all the result of investment earnings. And in that time, the market's gone down hard twice. So when you look at the value of the Fidelity account, it may be about half of what it was at this particular time last year, but it's much like a roller coaster. You know, the only guys that get hurt are the ones that jump off. So you have to have the intestinal fortitude or the appetite to recognize, yeah, we're in a bad place right now. I'm glad I don't have to dump all this stuff to pay for some frivolous expense, but ride it out. And historically, the market goes up about 72 days out of every 100. So thanks for taking the time to listen to this presentation. I hope it leaves you feeling like, hey, I can control my future. I'm not a victim in this whole thing. And maybe it'll cause you to go find a financial advisor or somebody that has more wisdom when it comes to this topic Discuss your situation, what you're looking for, make a plan, and work to it. Good luck. Thank you.